Hey everybody, it's Ruby here today, and today I wanted to discuss the TV adaptation of The Handmaid's Tale. And because I've never really done a review on this particular book, even though it is one of my favorite books, I thought that I would do a little bit of a discussion on the book as well, and just sort of talk about the comparison between the book and the TV show. This book is a book that I fell in love with a couple of years ago and it continues to be one of my favorite books of all time, so I'm a little bit surprised that I've never done a review on it, but that could partially just be because so many people have already read it or reviewed it. Now, before I get started, I just want to talk about the absence that I had once again. I started up videos and then suddenly just disappeared again, and even though I've been talking about wanting to return to this channel, and so I just wanted to talk a bit about what happened. So, as I've said previously, I am going to study abroad to do a graduate program in September here, so just in a couple of months. And so I took a gap year between my undergrad and my graduate program in order to save up some money. And during that gap year, I actually met someone, which is really funny because that always seems to happen at the worst time. So we actually started dating with the knowledge that both of us would be going on to do professional programs, and so there would be a time in which we would break up, and that time has come and gone. So for the past month, I had been going on a lot of dates with him and just generally recovering afterwards, and so I wanted to take some time to myself. And what I have noticed about YouTube, and one of the problems that I have with keeping up for a schedule, is the fact that I generally don't seem to be able to do schedule videos ahead of time. Like a lot of professional YouTubers who actually do this for a living will be like, oh, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks, so I will do 3 videos to make sure that I have everything in order. And that is not me. That is not something I can do, and sometimes I will film videos and then not upload them because I haven't edited them, and then the time has just passed between like what can be done, really. I just wanted to mention that that's not something that I generally will go into or bring up, but I thought that I would at least include you a little bit into my life. So The Handmaid's Tale is written by Margaret Atwood, who is a pretty famous Canadian author. She became famous mainly because of this book, but a lot of other really tremendous books as well, and poetry. This book was written in the 80s during the conservative backlash that happened after the 70s, and she wrote it to sort of discuss what would happen if America went even more traditionalist and right-wing than before. So the premise is that infertility has struck America, if not the world. I can't remember if it is the world or not, but this tends to be centered more around America, and that fertility is godly. So most people are being punished by God, and the people who still are fertile, who can still have children, are taken as handmaids, and they are used as surrogates for the higher ups. So the handmaids are these people here, so they generally wear like red robes to indicate that they are in the fertility business, I guess, because red means a bunch of different things. And then they also have white hoods, which are meant to be modest, and they're not supposed to really look outside of the hoods. And that is something that happens in a lot of religious cults or just religious institutions in general, where you will get people who do it out of modesty. And so this isn't generally to say that that is bad, but just to create some realism in what could happen when you have a little bit more religious fundamentalism within a government. So the main character, Offred, who is named that because she is of Fred, is talking about her life as the handmaid, and she alternates between the present tense and what she's going through and the past tense of what her life was like before. So having a husband and a child and sort of living it up in America at a time in which she had a lot more freedom to wear what she wanted to wear and to do what she wanted to do. There's a really poignant part of this book that I absolutely love, just because it illustrates how much of this is taken from what Margaret Atwood would have considered to be real life, and that is when the sort of fundamentalism first comes to be in America, and they're suddenly cut off from any funds that they have. So So she and her friend Moira tried to pay for a coffee with their debit cards, and they're declined, and then they are fired from their jobs. And that is to sort of show that women no longer have financial freedom and they have to rely on their husbands. And so they come home, they're terrified and angry, and they just finally realize kind of what's going on with their country. And her husband is like, oh, well, that's really sad, but I'll take care of you. Kind of, he's outraged, but he isn't terrified in the same way that they are. He's just kind of okay with what's going on. And that's because he isn't personally involved with this particular thing. So he's not like a bad person. He just doesn't have like the personal experiences to go along with that. And that, I think, is something that generally happens with a lot of different political things where maybe the implications aren't known by someone who isn't personally impacted by it. As for the TV show, this is something that recently came out. I believe that last week the finale finally happened. I took a little while to keep from actually doing the review because I wasn't sure if that was the finale, just because I wasn't sure how many episodes there were. It sort of ended how expected, but yeah. I was worried about how it would translate because it is like a first-person narrative that alternates between past and present, and that can be really hard to illustrate on screen, but they did that extremely well. They kept very close to what the plot and general feeling of the book is. So they include a lot of her snide comments, which I think is really cool and sort of really puts into focus what this sort of book is and how it's a future book instead of a past book, because the way that they dress and the way that they act kind of feels a lot more medieval, or like in the past, where women can't read and they can't like make their own financial decisions and they're sort of like married off. But it's really put into focus when she makes snide comments, she swears to herself, she misses certain things, she misses drinking with her friends and those sorts of things. And so they're able to sort of include that, and that helps, I think, bring at least some people, myself, into the character and how I would feel if I was in that situation, because I would totally be irritated and swearing at guards, in my head, but maybe not necessarily doing it in person. Camera angles are also really good. They sort of put the camera really close to the actor's face, like inside of the hood that they have to wear, in order to illustrate the loneliness of that particular way of living. And it's just like, it really puts you into that moment. They kept to the plot pretty much exactly as far as I can remember with the book, and the only things that they elaborated on were backstories of some of the characters, or how the legislation should have like continued. It was almost as though they kept a lot of her story and a lot of the first person narrative, but they expanded on that a little bit more to take advantage of the fact that there's more of an objective narrative when it comes to TV shows and movies. So it's not just her voice. We can also kind of look at how other characters are being impacted as well. So the person that she is living with, who she's the surrogate for, which is like a high-level commander, and his wife, Joy, I believe. So he's Fred and she's Joy. Were some of the first people to implement this particular legislation. And this was something that was alluded to in the books, just that they were high level, but this time around they actually discuss it. And so it's cool because it sort of shows how she pushed for something really traditional, and when she pushed for something really traditional, the result was something really traditional, and she lost some of her own voice. So they included some of the irony that was involved in creating this particular society, which was also awesome. And yeah, just the general feel of it, like just how it feels very familiar, like the city streets, but at the same time, you suddenly have this jolt where you'll have like these wide angle images of, the handmaids walking together down a street, and you'll see like modern day houses and like garbage cans with these like really traditional looking outfits, and you realize that they have been like planted into this society that was our society at some point, which I thought was really interesting. This is a book that is getting a lot of attention recently because of this series, but also because of the politics that are happening right now in America. My other video about 1984 and Brave New World have been getting a lot of attention for the same sort of reason, and that's just that some people with certain political affiliations are getting a bit terrified of what's happening because there is another conservative outlash. Part of this is just because some people with particular political affiliations are noticing the conservative backlash that's happening with Trump and are noticing some similarities as in the 80s and also in this book. And so people are dressing up as the Handmaids and going to like the Affordable Care Act meetings and things like that, which is really interesting. I'm not going to get into the politics of it because beyond just sort of addressing the fact that a book could be that influential in talking about politics, I am not American. I'm Canadian, which probably says a little bit about where my political leanings are, but I don't want to actually get into a debate about it. So anyways, there it is. So the book is excellent. I would recommend it to anybody interested in science fiction, in feminist books, in Canadian books, in books that are related to what's going on right now. And also I would recommend the TV series. Honestly, the TV series is just as good as the book. Some people are saying it's better. I would say just as good. Like, the book was amazing as well. And I would definitely recommend reading the book first, just because it was so influential in a lot of science fiction and just general feminist books of the 80s. So comment down below if you watched the TV series, if you agree with me about the difference between the TV show and the book, and if there are any other reviews you would like me to do. Well, thanks for watching. Comment, like, subscribe, do your thing, and I will talk to you guys later.